What's up, everybody? I'm doing this video. Feels like the third or fourth or fifth time I'm dealing with this subject, right? But I think it's important. And as I was telling Jarvis Sheffield, who runs the Black Science Fiction Society, this is actually it's going to happen. That's what's going to happen with all of this. This whole subject of race, classification, African sci-fi, Afrofuturism, black sci-fi. This whole conversation is going to continue to evolve and define itself, right? Or find itself, discover itself, however you want to say it. So it's all important, right? Now, there's three elements of it that I kind of want to talk about today. One, none of this would really be anything without the classification of race, okay? And race is classified differently in different parts of the world, okay? In America, we have black, white, Latino, Asian, Indian, Native American, and then you can go on from there, right? We have a thing called mulatto, and then we also have ethnicity. What is your ethnic group, right? Now, we joke in the islands they have black Chinese people, Chinese Jamaicans, Chinese Trinidadian people. These are people who have a race, that's one thing, but they have a ethnicity, a culture that is of the place that they were born. And then to top it off, if they live here in America, then they have a nationality that is something different. All of that is reality. All of that is, it is what it is. So that's the foundation. Now, on top of that, you have expressions, you have exclusions, you have all this other stuff that we kind of have to deal with, right? Because in America, black people have been exploited. Black people have been oppressed, right? In ways that Japanese people, even certain Latinos or Hispanics weren't. Some others were, but for maybe the South American and Central American, no. But, I mean, debatable. Dominican, Cuban, Puerto Rican probably have just been as exploited, as messed up as, not messed up, let's just say, oppressed, right, as Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Haitians, okay? And those are different, and Brazilians, right? Those are different than how African Americans were. So because of that legacy of oppression, science fiction has received, has been impacted, right? So how do we say that? We say, well, why do we need black sci-fi? Well, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s, there was segregation and the legacy of segregation. So while science fiction was being formed, there was segregation in the Western world that did not allow for black writers to mix their stories in with the white writers. Therefore, and probably very much like, and I'm not going to say I know of an example, but probably very much like with music, where you had white artists covering black artists' songs. I'm pretty sure, the plagiarism rules didn't apply to black writers either. And I'm pretty sure whether it was The Matrix or something else, stealing a black person's idea wasn't even a crime, okay? Because they stole so many of our other ideas. So let's just say that environment I'm not going to touch. But the need for black science fiction has come out of this culture, this society, right? So we needed it because of Black Americans needed to be seen. Now, African science fiction, right, didn't have, or let's say sub-Saharan, hell, all African, right? Whether it's Northern, Saharan, Eastern, Western, South African, they all didn't have the same type of segregation that African Americans experienced, where, you know, we were a national minority in our country. 13%, I don't think we were ever higher than that, although we are higher in certain states. We were denied abilities due to Jim Crow to govern ourselves. So even in, you know, states like Mississippi and probably South Carolina, where we were more than definitely 13%, even in Mississippi might have been the majority, we were disenfranchised because we weren't able to govern ourselves and probably own businesses, all types of stuff. And I'm not even going to get into all the Jim Crow stuff because it varied and people took advantage. But so that was different for us. So in Africa, on the continent, they were able to have an African, say, publishing company, an African classification that was just sci-fi. What the heck you gonna have Black sci-fi for in Africa when 90% of the people are Black people? What the heck? It doesn't make any sense. So of course you're not gonna have a Black sci-fi movement out of Africa. You're not gonna have a Black sci-fi movement out of Jamaica or Haiti or, you know, any of those places where we make up the majority, because it doesn't make sense. It's redundant. You understand? In a Harlem bookstore, right, you probably don't need a Black sci-fi section. You only need a sci-fi section because the whole bookstore is Black. So all of that we're dealing with. Then on top of that, right, now we have the gatekeepers, right? These are probably, these are the mainstream publishers. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about earlier was my objection, or just my reaction, my uncomfort to these lists that keep coming out. You know, and there's part of me that wants to be on the list, and then part of me that understands what the heck is going on with the list of you know, top Afrofuturistic writers, top Black writers of sci-fi and all these other stuff. And I'm down with all of the greats, and we know the names: N.K. Jemisin, Indy Okafor, Tomei, right? Beautiful writers, good stories, right? But they're not the only ones. Not to get into best or worst, because I think with writing, it's very subjective. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's an art, you know? So it's like anything, music. You get into your top 5 MCs, they're going to be different than my top 5 MCs. Even if I say this is trash, it still doesn't make that person trash. So when we talk about writers, we can't really talk about it like that. How do we talk about MCs is the same way. How do we describe who is the best? You have to qualify it. You have to say, all right, well, let's talk about who got the most album sales, or, you know, who made the most money, or, you know, even if you say best performance, that's subjective, right? But album sales are really hard. The problem with album sales is, you know, that's of the recording artists that have record deals. Before independent, before Chance the Rapper and Justin Bieber and they did their YouTube thing, it was get a record deal, get with a record company so you could chart your sales and be in the conversation. Now you don't need that. However, with writing and book publishing, it's still the same as it was before. Ebook marketing is on a similar platform, right? And maybe they can include some ebook publishing writers, right? But the publishing companies are still dominating writing in ways that record companies aren't dominating records the way they used to, okay? And so that's a big factor. The other thing is, I think in my reaction is, in hip-hop, we have a thing that speaks to coming out of a certain community, right? We take ownership over somebody who was a local hit, who blew up, and then got everybody else's support. Whereas in hip hop, right, if somebody just comes out with a record and never came through the community, it's something different about that artist. And I think we're in that conversation with writing, right? There's a lot of, in writing, there's two ways to become, or there's a couple of ways to become successful. You can get a publishing deal, or you can self-publish and blow up, right? So neither one has full ownership. But in the black sci-fi world, where we have this legacy of segregation, sci-fi is can be a very racially aware subgenre of literature. We had to fight to get black faces on the covers of books. Shout out to Tomei, but a lot of these writers even talk about it. Indy Okafor got a covered face, right, on her, this was it, a covered face, a black face on her book. But, there's stories of black characters in books that didn't have black faces on the cover. David Anthony Durham, he wrote a whole series, Acacia. He struggled with getting his characters on there. I think that's why I was attracted to L.A. Banks. It's because she had silhouetted colored characters on her horror stories, Vampire Huntress. So sci-fi has that challenge, and that's the independent route, right? But then the mainstream route is you write a manuscript and you keep submitting it until you get a deal. And then they reshape your manuscript, keep it, throw it away, or they put it out, right? And then you get introduced to the market. And I think what's happened with us is because of, I think, the racial politics of science fiction and dreams, that has had an impact on black sci-fi. And I don't know a lot of people writing spook who sat by the door, kill white people, sci-fi, black or white. But I don't know what the problem is. I will say this, that I do see a difference in what's dominating the independent black sci-fi world's topics as opposed to what gets published mainstream. And I will also say that I do think black people are supporting both. I don't know if more black people buy independent black sci-fi writers' stuff than they do mainstream stuff. I think you will find an equal distribution. Sometimes people know more about the independent black sci-fi writers because they come to a lot of events and that's what they're familiar with, and they just don't go to the mainstream bookstores. And then they'll find out, oh, I heard of Tomei. Okay, wow, that's really weird. But that's it, because we're all still under the spectrum. Even though we won awards, shoot, I'm still telling people about Acacia, David Anthony Durham series, and he won the top award, right? So I think it's different. And then there's also people that have, Binti, and then they say, oh, you know what? I want to read some more black sci-fi. So I don't think it's a either or, but I do feel some sort of way when the lists come out and it only has the mainstream published artists. I feel a need to just continue to promote, my independent brothers and sisters. Yo, we are Black Sci-Fi. We outnumber the mainstream just by sheer volume, so we have more to select from, and you will see a difference, and there is a difference, but I don't think it is something that's anti-mainstream. I don't think there's something that I've identified that separates us from being publishable in terms of the audience appeal. Now, do the gatekeepers see something? All right, we can go and talk about that at another blog. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now. It was a long conversation. I just wanted to vent and get it out. And then if you guys get something from it, all well, all good. Peace.